Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've been a sales rep for almost 6 years now, which means I've done more driving than I care to admit. Long stretches of highway, endless small towns, truck stops that all look the same. You get used to it after a while. The loneliness, the boredom, the way your mind starts playing tricks on you after midnight when you're the only car on the road. But what happened to me last October? That wasn't my mind playing tricks. I was driving home from a conference in Little Rock, heading back to Memphis. It had been a long 3 days of presentations and networking, and I was exhausted. The kind of tired where your eyes burn and you keep jolting awake every few minutes, realizing you've been driving on autopilot. I should have gotten a hotel room. I know that now, but I just wanted to get home to my daughter Emma. My ex-wife had her for the week, and I was supposed to pick her up the next morning. So I pushed through. It was around 2:30 in the morning when my gas light came on. I'd been ignoring it for the last 20 miles, telling myself I could make it, but the gauge was well into the red zone. I took the next exit I saw, somewhere in the middle of nowhere between Little Rock and the Tennessee border. The kind of exit that's just a ramp leading into darkness. No signs promising food or lodging. The gas station appeared about a mile down a 2-lane road, the only structure I'd seen since leaving the highway. It sat alone in a pool of harsh fluorescent light, surrounded by empty fields that stretched into blackness on all sides. The building itself looked weathered, like it had been there since the 70s and hadn't been updated since. One of those old independent stations with 2 pumps and a small convenience store attached. I pulled up to the pump and cut the engine. The silence hit me immediately. No traffic sounds, no music from inside the store, just the chorus of cicadas in the fields and the ticking of my cooling engine. The humid night air wrapped around me as I stepped out, thick and heavy, carrying the smell of diesel fuel and sun-baked asphalt. There was one other vehicle in the lot, a beaten-up sedan parked at the far edge, away from the lights. I couldn't see anyone inside, but something about it made me uneasy. The way it sat there in the shadows, windows dark, like it was watching. I shook off the feeling and swiped my card at the pump. The machine beeped, the display lit up, and I started fueling. That's when I noticed movement near the convenience store entrance. A man stepped out from the shadows beside the building. He moved slowly, deliberately, into the light. His hair was unwashed and hung in greasy strings around his face. His jacket was stained with what looked like oil or dirt, and his eyes. Even from a distance, there was something hollow about them. Something wrong. He started walking toward me. I kept my hand on the pump handle, watching him approach. My heart rate picked up, that primal instinct telling me something wasn't right. He was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. When he was about 10 feet away, he spoke. "Marcus Webb, right?" I froze. The pump handle felt slippery in my suddenly sweaty palm. The numbers on the display kept climbing, but I couldn't move. Couldn't look away from this stranger who somehow knew my full name. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. He took another step closer. Up close, I could see the details. Twitchy hands that kept clenching and unclenching. A chemical smell coming off him, sharp and unpleasant. Eyes that didn't seem to blink enough. "No, we've never met," he said, still smiling. "But I know you, Marcus. Congratulations on the promotion, by the way. Regional sales manager. That's a big step up." My blood went cold. I'd gotten that promotion 3 weeks ago. It hadn't been announced publicly yet. Just an internal email to the team. "How's Emma doing?" he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "She must be, 7 now? 2nd grade at Riverside Elementary, right? Lives on Oakmont Drive with her mother. The world tilted. Every detail was correct, every single one. My daughter's name, her age, her school, the street where my ex-wife lived, information that this stranger in the middle of nowhere at 2:30 in the morning had no business knowing. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, my voice rising. "How do you know these things?" His smile widened. "I've been waiting for you to stop here, Marcus. Knew you'd come through eventually. Everyone does if you wait long enough." The pump clicked off. My tank was full, but I couldn't move, couldn't process what was happening. "You shouldn't have taken that promotion," he said, his voice dropping lower. "Someone else deserved it. Someone who'd been there longer, who'd put in more years, but you swooped in and took it, didn't you?" My mind raced. He was talking about Derek. Derek Thompson, the other guy who'd been up for the position. We'd both interviewed and I'd gotten it. But Derek had been understanding, or at least he'd seemed to be. Sent me a congratulatory email and everything. Are you talking about Derek?" I asked. The man didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket. I tensed, ready to run, my hand fumbling for my car door handle. But what he pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a business card, my business card, but not my current one. This one had my old company's logo on it. From the job I'd left 4 years ago, the printing was faded, the edges worn like it had been carried around for a long time. "I've held on to this for a long time, Marcus," he said, turning it over in his fingers. 4 years, 2 months, and 16 days. That was impossible. That was the exact amount of time since I'd left that company. I looked past him toward the convenience store. Through the grimy window, I could see a man behind the counter, the attendant, watching a small television. He seemed completely oblivious to what was happening outside, completely unconcerned that one of his customers was being confronted by a stranger in the middle of the night. "I need to go," I said, pulling the pump handle out and jamming it back into the holder. My hands were shaking. The man stepped closer, blocking my path to the driver's side door. "You know what happened to the last person who took something that wasn't theirs?" he whispered. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I shoved past him, harder than I meant to, and yanked open my car door. My fingers fumbled with the keys, dropping them once before getting them into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I threw it into drive. As I peeled out of the parking lot, gravel spraying behind me, I looked in my rearview mirror. The man was standing exactly where I'd left him, still under the harsh lights of the gas station. Still smiling, his hands hung at his sides, completely motionless now as he watched me disappear into the darkness. I drove straight through without stopping again. Didn't even slow down until I saw the lights of Memphis ahead of me. My hands didn't stop shaking until I pulled into my apartment complex and locked every door behind me. The next morning, after a few hours of restless sleep, I called the gas station. It took some work to find the number. The place was so old it barely had an online presence. When the manager finally answered, I described what had happened, described the man in detail. "We only had one employee working last night," the manager said, sounding confused. "Night shift guy. He didn't mention any incidents. Said it was a quiet night. Just a handful of customers." "Can you check your security footage?" I asked. There was a long pause. "Sure, hold on." I waited for what felt like an eternity, my coffee getting cold in my hand. "Sir," the manager came back on the line. "I'm looking at the footage from 2:30 to 3 a.m. I can see your vehicle pulling up to pump 2. I can see you getting out, fueling up, but what? There's no one else there, no other person approaching you, no conversation. You pump your gas and leave. That's it." My stomach dropped. "That's not possible. He was right there. He spoke to me. He knew things. Sir, I'm sorry, sir. The footage is clear. You were alone the entire time." I hung up without saying goodbye. For the rest of the day, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I'd been more exhausted than I thought. Maybe it was some kind of hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation and stress. The mind can play tricks, especially in that twilight state between awake and asleep. But that night, when I was getting ready for bed, I found something in my car, the business card. My old business card from 4 years ago. It was sitting on my passenger seat, exactly where the man had been standing when I'd shoved past him. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was real, solid. The paper was worn and faded, the corners bent. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, were 3 words, "I'll be watching." I threw it away, burned it, actually, in my kitchen sink. Watched it curl and blacken until there was nothing left but ash. A week later, I got a Facebook friend request. I almost deleted it without looking, but something made me pause. The profile had no picture, no information, no posts, just a name. Marcus Webb. My exact name. Someone had created a profile with my name and sent me a friend request. I didn't accept it. I blocked it immediately and tried to report it, but Facebook said they couldn't find any violations. The account stayed up, and the notifications kept coming. Every few days, another friend request. Another message request that I was too afraid to open, always from the same blank profile with my name. I changed all my privacy settings, made everything private, stopped posting about Emma, stopped checking in places, stopped sharing anything about my life online, but I still get the notifications. Even now, months later, friend requests from myself, message requests that sit there, unread in my filtered folder. I don't know what's in those messages. I'm too afraid to look. And I never took that route home again. I drive an extra hour out of my way to avoid that stretch of highway, that exit, that gas station in the middle of nowhere. Because part of me knows that if I go back, he'll be waiting. If you're still listening, you probably enjoy stories like this. A like or a comment helps keep them alive. I work as a nurse at Desert Regional Medical Center in Palm Springs, and anyone in healthcare will tell you that double shifts are brutal. 16 hours on your feet, dealing with emergencies, comforting families, trying to keep people alive. By the time you clock out, you're not just tired, you're hollowed out, running on pure autopilot. That's the state I was in when I left the hospital at 3:45 in the morning last July. I live in Barstow, about 2 hours north on Route 66. Most people think I'm crazy for making that commute, but the pay at Desert Regional is better, and housing in Barstow is half the cost. Usually I crash at my sister's place in Palm Springs after doubles, but she was out of town that week, so I had to make the drive. The desert at night is a special kind of darkness. No streetlights once you leave the city, no houses. Just endless black on either side of the highway, with only your headlights carving a small tunnel through the void. The stars are beautiful out there, but they also make you feel incredibly small. Insignificant. I'd been driving for about 40 minutes when my gas light came on. I swore under my breath. I'd meant to fill up before my shift started, but we'd had a trauma come in right as I was parking, and I'd completely forgotten. Now I was stuck hoping I could make it to the next station. The truck stop appeared like an oasis, one of those massive places designed for long-haul truckers with rows of pumps and a convenience store that glows like a beacon. At 4 a.m., most of the lot was empty except for a few semis idling in the far corner, their running lights creating little constellations in the darkness. I pulled up to a pump, turned off the engine, and just sat there for a moment. My body ached. My feet throbbed. I wanted nothing more than to be home in my bed. But I needed gas, and I desperately needed coffee if I was going to make it the rest of the way. The air outside was surprisingly cold for July, that desert chill that sets in before dawn. The smell of gasoline mixed with the ever-present scent of creosote from the desert. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the constant hum of refrigeration units from the trucks. I swiped my card, started pumping, and locked the handle so it would fill automatically. Then I headed inside. The convenience store was harsh and bright after the darkness outside. Too many fluorescent lights, everything amplified. The cashier was a young guy, maybe early 20s, slouched behind the counter, scrolling through his phone. He barely glanced up when I walked in. I headed straight for the coffee station, praying it was fresh. Hospital coffee is terrible, but truck stop coffee at 4 a.m. can be even worse. I was pouring myself a large cup when I happened to glance out the window toward where I'd parked. My Honda Civic was clearly visible under the sodium lights, right where I'd left it, and there was someone in the back seat. The cup slipped from my hand, coffee splashing across the counter. I barely noticed. My eyes were locked on my car, on the dark shape visible through the rear window, a human silhouette. Someone was sitting in my back seat. "Are you okay?" the cashier called out, annoyed. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. I'd locked my car. I knew I had. I always locked my car, especially out here, especially at night. It was automatic, muscle memory. "Hey, I need you to clean that up," the cashier said, but I was already moving toward the door. "Call the police," I said, my voice coming out strange and high-pitched. "There's someone in my car." "What?" "Someone's in my back seat. Call 911, now." He finally looked up from his phone, saw the expression on my face, and something in his demeanor changed. "Are you sure?" "I can see them. Look." I pointed through the window at my car. He stood up, craned his neck to look, then shrugged. "I don't see anyone." "They're right there, in the back seat." He grabbed a flashlight from behind the counter. "I'll go check it out." "Stay here." But I couldn't stay. I grabbed a tire iron from a display near the automotive section and followed him outside, keeping several feet back. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The cashier approached my car slowly, shining the flashlight through the windows. The back seat was empty. Completely empty. "There's no one in there," he called back to me. "That's impossible. I saw—" "Lady, there's no one in your car. Look." He tried the door handles. Still locked, all 4 doors. "See? Locked up tight. No one's been in there." I moved closer, peering through the rear window. The back seat was definitely empty now. Nothing but my gym bag on the floor and an old sweatshirt I kept back there. "I saw someone," I insisted, but even I could hear the doubt creeping into my voice. "I saw a person sitting right there." The cashier gave me a look. The kind of look you give someone when you think they might be crazy or high. "Maybe you're just tired. You said you're a nurse, right? Long shift?" 16 hours. There you go. Exhaustion can make you see things. Happened to my brother once when he pulled an all-nighter studying. Started seeing shadow people and everything. I wanted to argue, but what could I say? The car was locked. The back seat was empty. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was more exhausted than I'd realized. Hallucinations weren't uncommon with severe sleep deprivation. I'd seen patients experience them. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. You're probably right. I'm just really tired." "It's cool. Happens to the best of us. You good to drive? There's a motel about 5 miles up if you need to crash." "No, I'll be fine." "I'm sorry for freaking out." He headed back inside, shaking his head. I stood there for another moment, staring at my car. The pump had shut off automatically. I needed to go in and pay, then get the hell out of here. But first I circled my car one more time. Checked every door. Checked the trunk, looked under the seats through the windows. Nothing. No signs that anyone had been in sight. I was reaching for the driver's side door when something caught my eye. The rearview mirror. It was tilted down at an angle, pointing at the back seat. That wasn't how I kept it. I always adjusted my mirrors the same way. Had for years. The rearview mirror should be angled to show the road behind me, not the interior of my car. But it was definitely pointed down, like someone had adjusted it to see into the back seat. My hand froze on the door handle. Then I noticed something else. On the floor of the back seat, partially hidden by my gym bag, was a footprint. A muddy footprint, small like from a woman's shoe. The kind of print that would have been left by someone sitting in the back seat with their feet on the floor. My car floor had been clean this morning. I'd vacuumed it over the weekend. There was no way I'd left a muddy footprint. I yanked open the driver's door, heart racing again. The overhead light came on, and a smell hit me. Perfume. Sickly sweet. Floral. Definitely not mine. I never wore perfume to work because of patient allergies. Someone had been in my car. Someone had been sitting in my back seat. I ran back inside, nearly colliding with the cashier. There was someone in there. Look, there's a footprint and the mirrors moved and... Okay, he said, holding up his hands. Let's call the cops then, if you really think someone was in your car. The police took 40 minutes to arrive. 2 officers, both looking annoyed at being called out to a truck stop at 4:30 in the morning. They took my statement, photographed the footprint, noted the mirror position. One of them checked the car for fingerprints, but said it was unlikely they'd find anything useful. Any idea how they would have gotten in? The older officer asked. You said all the doors were locked? I don't know. I locked them. I always lock them. Any signs of forced entry? Scratches around the locks? There weren't. The doors and locks looked completely normal. Is it possible you left them unlocked by accident? The younger officer suggested. It happens, especially when you're tired. I guess it's possible, I admitted, though I didn't believe it. They filled out a report, told me to keep my doors locked and be aware of my surroundings. Standard advice that didn't make me feel any safer. Then they left. I drove straight to the police station in Barstow instead of going home. Parked in their lot, reclined my seat, and slept for 3 hours with my doors locked and my hand on my phone. When I finally went home and searched the car in daylight, I found something else. Something I'd missed in the dim parking lot lighting. Under the passenger seat, wedged against the track, was a hospital ID badge. Not from my hospital. Different facility, different city entirely. The photo showed a woman, maybe late 30s, with dark hair, and an expression that seemed hollow, empty. The name on the badge, Sarah Vickers, RN. The hospital, Valley View Medical Center in San Bernardino. I'd never heard of it, had never been there, had no idea how this badge ended up in my car. I searched the name online that night, hands shaking as I typed. The results made my blood turn to ice. Sarah Vickers, registered nurse. Reported missing 3 months ago after leaving her night shift at Valley View Medical Center. Last seen at a truck stop outside Barstow. The same truck stop where I'd stopped. Security footage showed her fueling her vehicle at 4:12 a.m., going inside, then returning to her car. She was never seen again. Her car was found abandoned 2 days later on a desert road. Doors unlocked, keys in the ignition, no signs of struggle, no blood, no evidence of what happened to her. She simply vanished. I called the police again, turned in the badge. They seemed interested at first, but then I never heard back. I called the detective handling Sarah Vickers' case, left 3 messages. No response. I don't stop at that truck stop anymore. I don't stop anywhere after dark if I can help it. I fill up before my shifts, keep my tank as full as possible, plan my routes to avoid being stranded, and every time I get in my car, I check the back seat, check under the seats, check the trunk, make sure all the mirrors are positioned correctly. Because I know what I saw that night, someone was in my back seat. They were there, watching me through the window, sitting in the dark while I pumped gas. I think I know who it was. Sarah Vickers disappeared from that truck stop 3 months before I stopped there. She vanished without a trace, her car left behind with the doors unlocked. But maybe she didn't really leave. Maybe she's still there, still looking for a way home. Still trying to climb into the back seats of cars that stop in the middle of the night, hoping one of them will take her somewhere, anywhere, away from that place. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if I even believe in ghosts or spirits or whatever you want to call it. But I still have her ID badge. It's real, it's solid, and there's no rational explanation for how it ended up under my seat. Sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in bed, I wonder what would have happened if I'd driven home without checking. If I hadn't looked through that window and seen the silhouette, would she have stayed there in my back seat? Would I have heard breathing behind me as I drove? Seen her in my rearview mirror? Or would I have ended up like her, car abandoned, doors unlocked, gone without a trace? I don't know, and I'm grateful I never had to find out. I've been a long-haul trucker for 22 years. I've driven every major highway in this country, logged over 3 million miles, seen things most people wouldn't believe. When you spend that much time alone on the road, you learn that there are places out there that don't quite fit. Places that exist in the cracks, where the normal rules don't seem to apply. I found one of those places last November in Montana. I was running a load from Seattle to Minneapolis, taking State Highway 200 across the top of Montana because the interstate was shut down due to early snow. It's beautiful country up there, but sparse. You can drive for an hour without seeing another vehicle. Towns are few and far between, and when you do find them, they're small, real small. It was around 3:15 in the morning when my fuel gauge started dipping into the red. I'd been planning to fill up in Great Falls, but I'd gotten a late start and decided to push through. Bad decision. The temperature was dropping and I could see snow starting to fall in my headlights. I needed to fuel up soon before the weather got worse. The exit appeared out of nowhere. No sign advertising it, no advance warning. Just a ramp leading off into darkness. I almost missed it, but I was getting desperate. So I took the exit and followed the road about 2 miles into what passed for a town. Calling it a town was generous. A cluster of dark buildings, maybe a dozen houses, and one gas station at the far end. The station was the only thing with lights on, glowing like a beacon in the snowfall. The sign above it was so faded I couldn't make out the brand name. The building looked ancient, something out of the 70s with wood paneling and a hand-painted price board. I pulled my rig up to the pumps, old-fashioned ones, the kind where the numbers flip mechanically instead of displaying digitally. The parking lot was empty, no other vehicles. Population sign at the town entrance had said 340, but I didn't see any signs of life. The cold hit me like a wall when I opened the door. The wind was picking up, cutting across the empty plains with nothing to stop it. I could smell snow in the air, that particular crisp scent that comes before a heavy storm. The asphalt was cracked and buckled, weeds growing through the gaps. I tried swiping my card at the pump. The reader looked like it was from 1985. Nothing happened. I tried again. Still nothing. Cursing under my breath, I headed inside. The door chimed when I pushed it open, one of those old mechanical bells. The interior matched the exterior, wood paneling, yellowed posters advertising cigarette brands that didn't exist anymore, a counter with an ancient cash register. Behind the counter sat an old man, and I mean old. He had to be pushing 80, maybe 90. Thick glasses that magnified his eyes. Weathered skin, gnarled hands resting on the counter. He looked up when I entered, but didn't speak. Card readers not working on pump 4, I said. He nodded slowly. Cash only, but you can pump first, pay after. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in a while. He went back to staring at nothing, and I got the distinct impression this conversation was over. I headed back outside, uneasy, but too cold and tired to care. The pump handle was stiff, like it hadn't been used in a while. I squeezed it and heard the ancient mechanism clunk to life. Fuel started flowing. I watched the numbers flip on the mechanical display. 1 gallon, 2 gallons, 5 gallons. My truck has a 125-gallon tank, and it was pretty empty, so I settled in for a long fill. 10 gallons. 15. 20. The snow was falling harder now, big flakes that swirled in the wind. I couldn't see more than 50 feet in any direction. The town had disappeared completely behind a white curtain. 30 gallons. 45. 60. I zipped up my jacket and stomped my feet, trying to stay warm. This was taking forever. The fuel was flowing slower than normal, that old pump struggling to keep up. 80 gallons. 95. 110. I watched the numbers climb, thinking about the route ahead. I'd need to check the weather reports, maybe hole up somewhere if the snow got too bad. The last thing I needed was to get stranded in the middle of Montana. 125 gallons. The pump should have shut off. My tank was full, but the handle didn't click. The fuel kept flowing and the numbers kept climbing. 130 gallons, 140, 155, what the hell? I tried to release the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The trigger was locked in place and fuel was still pouring into my tank, except that was impossible. The tank only held 125 gallons. Where was it going? 170 gallons. 195. 210. I started to panic. I yanked on the handle, tried to pull it out of the tank, but it was stuck. The numbers were spinning faster now, flipping upward at an impossible rate. I ran toward the store, slipping on the snow-covered ground. Hey, something's wrong with the pump. It won't shut off. The old man was still behind the counter, hadn't moved an inch. He looked up slowly, those magnified eyes fixing on me. Happens sometimes, he said, to certain folks. What the hell does that mean? It's spilling everywhere. He shook his head. No spill, just numbers. I ran back outside. The pump was still going, but he was right. There was no fuel on the ground. My tank wasn't overflowing, the hose wasn't leaking, but the display showed 627 gallons and climbing. Then, without warning, the numbers stopped spinning. They flipped backward, resetting until they showed something that made my blood freeze. Not gallons anymore. Coordinates. 46, 87, 21, 113, 9940 grams to W. The display held on those numbers for several seconds before switching again. This time, a date, 11/03/1987. I stared at it, my breath misting in the cold air. That date, it meant something. I knew it meant something. My brain was screaming at me that this was important, but I couldn't place it. Then it hit me like a freight train. November 3rd, 1987. The day my brother disappeared. Jason had been 19 years old, driving from Spokane to Billings for a job interview. He'd been taking State Highway 200, this exact route. He'd called home that morning, said he'd be there by evening. He never arrived. His car was never found. No body, no evidence, nothing. He had simply vanished somewhere along this stretch of highway, and despite weeks of searching, nobody ever found any trace of him. That was 38 years ago. I'd been 15 when it happened. The hole Jason left behind never really closed. My mother went to her grave, still wondering what happened to her oldest son. The pump handle finally released. I pulled it out with shaking hands and stumbled back toward the store. The old man was standing now, waiting for me at the door. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. "How did that pump know?" "This place remembers things," he said quietly. "It's not really a gas station, not anymore. It's something else. Something that exists between places, between times. It shows people what they need to see, or what they need to know." "That's insane. You're talking about—" "Your brother," he interrupted. "Jason Webb, November 3rd, 1987. You were wondering what happened to him." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "The coordinates," he continued. "That's where you'll find him, where you've always needed to find him." "How do you know my brother's name? How do you—" "You should go now," he said, stepping back inside. "Storm's getting worse, and this place, it doesn't like people staying too long." "Wait. I need to pay for the gas. I need—" but he'd already closed the door. Through the window, I could see him shuffling back behind the counter, settling into his chair like I'd never existed. I got in my truck and left. Didn't argue, didn't try to figure it out. I just drove, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. The snow was coming down in sheets now, visibility near zero. It took me 20 minutes to find the entrance ramp back to the highway. I should have kept driving, should have finished my run to Minneapolis, delivered my load, tried to forget what happened. But I couldn't. Those coordinates were burned into my brain. I pulled over at the first rest stop and plugged them into my GPS. Middle of nowhere, 80 miles from any road, deep in the Montana wilderness. The kind of place you'd need a helicopter or serious hiking equipment to reach. I couldn't stop thinking about it. For 3 months, those coordinates haunted me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, the numbers clear in my mind. I'd be driving and suddenly realize I was heading in that direction, pulled by something I couldn't explain. Finally, I hired a guide. Cost me most of my savings, but I had to know. We set out in April, after the snow had melted enough to make the trek possible. Took us 2 days of hiking through rough terrain, following GPS coordinates into areas where no roads existed. We found it on the afternoon of the second day. A car, so rusted and overgrown it was barely recognizable. Decades of weather and vegetation had almost completely consumed it, but the license plate was still partially visible. Jason's car. We called the authorities. They sent a team out, recovered the remains. Dental records confirmed it was Jason. He'd gone off the road somehow, ended up in a ravine too remote for anyone to find. The coroner estimated he died on impact. November 3rd, 1987. He'd been there all along, less than 100 miles from where I'd been that night at the gas station. Less than 100 miles from where he'd vanished 38 years ago. The authorities asked me how I'd known where to look. I told them I'd found an old map in Jason's belongings, mentioned coordinates. They didn't press it. I never told anyone the truth. Never told them about the gas station, the pump that wouldn't stop, the old man who knew my brother's name. Who would believe it? I finished my run to Minneapolis, then drove back through Montana, taking State Highway 200 again. I looked for that exit, that town, that gas station. It wasn't there. I drove that stretch 3 times, checked my GPS logs to find the exact spot where I'd exited. Nothing, no off-ramp, no road leading into the darkness, just empty highway and fields on either side. I checked maps, called the Montana DOT. There's no town at that location. No gas station has existed there in 50 years. The clerk at the DOT said the only station in that area burned down in 1961. Owner died in the fire. But my fuel tank had been full. That wasn't a hallucination. And I'd found my brother. That was real. Years later, I started searching online for similar stories. Late nights in truck stop parking lots, scrolling through forums and message boards, looking for anyone else who'd experienced something like this. I found them, dozens of accounts, different states, different times, but always the same pattern. Impossible gas stations appearing in the middle of nowhere. Pumps that showed things they shouldn't. Coordinates, dates, names, messages. Old attendants who knew things about the drivers that no stranger should know. A woman in Nevada whose pump displayed her missing daughter's phone number, a number that had been disconnected for 3 years. She called it anyway from a payphone. Her daughter answered. She'd run away, was living in Carson City, wanted to come home but was too ashamed. They reunited 2 weeks later. A man in Idaho whose pump showed him the exact time and location of an accident that would happen 3 days later. He didn't believe it, but when that day came, he avoided that stretch of highway. Later learned there'd been a fatal pileup at that exact time and place. If he'd kept to his normal route, he would have been in the middle of it. A trucker in Wyoming whose pump displayed coordinates that led him to a woman trapped in her car after sliding off an icy road. She'd been there for 6 hours in freezing temperatures. Another hour, and she would have died from hypothermia. The stories went on, different details, but always the same core elements. A gas station that shouldn't exist. A pump that shows impossible things. Information that saves lives or provides closure or warns of danger. Some people think they're guardian angels. Others think they're glitches in reality, places where the fabric of the universe wears thin and information bleeds through from other times and places. A few think they're something darker, something that feeds on desperation and grief, showing people what they want to see for reasons we don't understand. I don't know what they are. I just know that they're real. I still drive long haul, still cross Montana several times a year. I always take Highway 200 when I can, always watch for that exit. Part of me hopes I'll never see it again. Part of me hopes I will, so I can thank whoever or whatever gave me the gift of knowing what happened to my brother, of being able to bring him home after 38 years. My mother died not knowing where Jason was, but at least I got to bury him next to her, got to put flowers on his grave, got to say goodbye properly. That's worth more than I can say, but I'll tell you this. If you're ever driving late at night and you find yourself at a gas station that doesn't quite feel right, a place that seems a little too old, a little too isolated, a little too impossible, pay attention to what it shows you. It might be trying to tell you something you need to know. And maybe, just maybe, you should listen. I'm a graphic designer, mostly freelance work, which means I spend a lot of time meeting with clients at their offices. Last March, I had a meeting in Portland with a tech startup that wanted a complete rebrand. The meeting was supposed to be at 4 p.m., quick consultation, maybe an hour tops. But the CEO kept asking questions, wanted to see more mock-ups, more concepts. By the time I left their office, it was past midnight. I live in Wilsonville, about 30 minutes south on I-5. Not a bad drive normally, but I was exhausted, and it had started raining. Not the light mist Portland's famous for, but a heavy downpour that turned the highway into a river of brake lights and spray. I was about halfway home when I realized I needed gas. I'd been running on fumes all day, kept telling myself I'd fill up after the meeting. The gauge was well past empty, the low fuel light glowing amber on my dashboard. I took the next exit and followed signs to a gas station at the edge of what looked like industrial warehouses and dark woods. The station was one of those 24-hour places, bright but almost empty. A few cars scattered around. Nobody at the pumps. Rain drummed on my roof as I pulled up to pump 3, the sound almost deafening after the quiet of the highway. I made a run for it into the convenience store, getting soaked in the few seconds it took to cross the parking lot. Inside, it was bright and warm, fluorescent lights reflecting off the wet floor. Coffee brewing somewhere. The smell of hot dogs that had been rotating on those heated rollers for way too long. I grabbed a protein bar and a bottle of water, thinking I should eat something before finishing the drive. While I was standing in line, I noticed a woman by the magazine rack. She was maybe mid-40s, dark hair plastered to her head from the rain. Her clothes looked expensive but were soaked through. What struck me was that she wasn't looking at the magazines. She was looking at me. Direct eye contact, intense, unwavering. I looked away quickly. That instinctive discomfort you feel when a stranger stares too long. When I glanced back, she was still staring, not even trying to hide it. There was something off about her expression, not angry, not confused, just focused, like she was studying me. The cashier rang up my items, barely acknowledging me. Young guy, probably college age, looked half asleep. I paid quickly and headed back out into the rain, anxious to get away from that woman's stare. At the pump, I swiped my card and started fueling. The rain was coming down harder now, bouncing off the concrete, creating a mist that made everything look surreal. Through the store windows, I could see the woman. She'd moved closer to the door, still watching me. Our eyes met through the glass. She smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. I finished pumping, hands moving faster than necessary. Something was wrong. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to leave. I got in my car, locked the doors immediately, and pulled out of the parking lot faster than I should have. The highway entrance was about a quarter mile down the road. I accelerated, eager to get back on I-5, back into traffic, back to somewhere that felt safer than this isolated exit. I checked my rearview mirror, and my heart skipped. Headlights, a car pulling out of the gas station behind me. Following. It could be a coincidence, I told myself. Same direction. Lots of people heading south on I-5. But then I saw the car more clearly under a streetlight. A Honda CR-V. Dark color. Older model. I hadn't noticed it at the gas station, but now that I thought about it, I remembered seeing a CR-V parked several spaces from mine. Had that woman been sitting in it, watching me the whole time? I took the on-ramp, merging into the sparse late-night traffic. The CR-V followed. Stayed about 3 car lengths back. Consistent distance. Not closing in, but not falling behind either. My phone was in the cup holder. I tried calling my boyfriend, Jake. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "Hey, it's me. I'm heading home from Portland, and I think someone might be following me. Call me back." I tried to stay calm. It was probably nothing. People travel the same highways. It didn't mean anything. I stayed in the right lane, going exactly the speed limit. The CR-V stayed behind me, matching my speed. I changed to the middle lane. The CR-V changed lanes too. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. That wasn't a coincidence. I passed 3 exits without taking any of them, watching the CR-V in my mirror the entire time. It never wavered, never changed position, just followed, maintaining that same 3-car distance like a shadow. My exit was coming up. Wilsonville. My exit, the one that would take me home. But I didn't want to take it. Didn't want this person knowing where I lived. If they were following me, I couldn't lead them to my house. At the last second, I took a different exit. Donald, a small town I'd driven through 100 times but never stopped in. The CR-V followed. My heart was racing now, no question about it. I was being followed. The exit led onto a dark 2-lane road heading into residential neighborhoods. Streetlights were sparse. Houses dark, no other traffic. Just me and the CR-V behind me. I made a right turn. The CR-V turned. I made a left. The CR-V turned. Another right, another left. Every turn I made, the CR-V made too. No hesitation, no confusion, just precise, deliberate following. I ran a stop sign, blowing through it at 40 miles per hour. The CR-V ran it too. This was real. This was happening. Someone was actively pursuing me through dark suburban streets in the middle of the night, and I had no idea what they wanted. I saw lights ahead. A 24-hour grocery store. The parking lot lit up like daylight. I pulled in fast, parking near the entrance where there were people. A couple loading groceries. A store employee collecting shopping carts. The CR-V pulled in and parked about 6 spaces away. Engine running, lights on, just sitting there. I could see the silhouette of someone in the driver's seat. Couldn't make out details through the rain and darkness, but I knew who it was. That woman from the gas station. She'd followed me here, 15 miles, through multiple turns, through residential neighborhoods where there was no reason to be unless you lived there or were following someone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm being followed. I'm at the Safeway in Donald. There's a woman who's been following me for the last 20 minutes. She's parked nearby right now, just watching me. Are you in your vehicle? Yes. Doors locked. She's in a dark Honda CR-V parked about 6 spaces away. Is she threatening you? Has she approached you? No, but she followed me off the highway. I made multiple turns trying to lose her, and she followed every single one. I'm scared. Okay, stay calm. Stay in your vehicle with doors locked. Officers are on their way. Should be there in about 10 minutes. 10 minutes felt like an eternity. I watched the CR-V in my mirror. It didn't move, didn't turn off. Just sat there, engine idling, headlights illuminating the rain. I could see movement in the driver's seat. Just a shadow. Watching, the police arrived faster than promised. 2 patrol cars pulled into the lot, lights flashing. I felt a wave of relief so intense I almost cried. One officer approached my car, the other walked toward the CR-V. I rolled down my window. You called about being followed? Yes, that CR-V over there. The woman inside followed me from a gas station near Wilsonville. I tried to lose her, but she followed every turn I made. The other officer was talking to the driver of the CR-V. I watched anxiously as the conversation played out. The woman got out of her car. It was definitely her. Same dark hair, same wet clothes. She was gesturing, shaking her head, looking confused. The officer spoke with her for several minutes, then walked back to us. Ma'am, she says she wasn't following you. Says she lives in this area and was just heading home. She seems pretty confused about the accusation. That's impossible. I made 4 turns in a row. Right, left, right, left. She made every single one. I ran a stop sign, and so did she. She was following me. She says she was just using her GPS to get home. Sometimes routes overlap, especially in residential areas. For 15 miles? Through that many turns? I understand you're upset, but she hasn't committed any crime. We can't arrest someone for driving in the same direction. Has she threatened you in any way? Has she tried to contact you? No, but then legally, there's nothing we can do. I'd suggest you wait here until she leaves, then head home. If you see her again or she makes any direct threats, call us immediately. They talked to her for a few more minutes, took down her information, then let her go. She got back in her CR-V and drove away, disappearing into the rain. The officers stayed with me for another 10 minutes, making sure I felt safe. Then they left too. I sat in that parking lot for another 30 minutes, making sure she was really gone. Then I drove home, taking a completely different route, checking my mirrors obsessively the entire way. I made it home around 2:30 a.m., checked every lock twice, turned on every light, and sat on my couch shaking until Jake got home from his overnight shift at 7 a.m. You okay? He asked when he saw me. I told him everything. He held me while I cried, told me it was over, that I was safe, called into work and stayed home with me that day. But it wasn't over. The next morning, still rattled but trying to function normally, I checked my doorbell camera footage. I have one of those Ring doorbells that records motion. I scrolled back through the night's recordings. At 4:17 a.m., a car slowly drove past my house, stopped directly in front, sat there for 3 full minutes, engine running, then drove away. The footage was dark, grainy, but I could make out enough. Honda CR-V, dark color. My stomach dropped. She'd found my house. Somehow, despite me not taking my normal exit, despite all my attempts to lose her, she'd found where I lived. I called the police again, filed another report. They said the same thing. Without a direct threat, there was nothing they could do. Told me to document everything, keep records, install security cameras. For the next 3 weeks, I saw that CR-V everywhere. Parked outside my gym when I went for my morning workout, in the parking lot of my favorite coffee shop, sitting at the far end of the lot when I went grocery shopping. Always at a distance, always just watching. I changed my routines, started going to different places at different times, took different routes, never posted on social media about where I was. I felt like a prisoner in my own life. Jake wanted me to get a restraining order, but you need evidence of a direct threat for that. All I had was sightings. A car that happened to be in the same place as I was. Technically, she hadn't done anything illegal. Then, about a month after that night, it stopped. I didn't see the CRV anymore. Not at my gym, not at coffee shops, not driving past my house. It was like she'd vanished. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt more anxious. Because I didn't know why she'd stopped. Didn't know if she was really gone or just watching from somewhere I couldn't see. It's been 6 months now. I haven't seen her or that car since. But I still check my mirrors obsessively when I drive. Still look over my shoulder in parking lots. Still watch my doorbell camera footage every morning. I moved 2 months ago. Didn't tell many people where. Updated all my privacy settings. Made sure my address isn't searchable online. Sometimes I wonder what she wanted. Why she followed me that night. Why she kept showing up afterward. Was it random? Did I look like someone she knew? Was there some explanation that would make it all make sense? Or was it something darker? Something I'll never understand. I don't have answers. All I have is the memory of that night, of seeing those headlights follow me through turn after turn, of that woman's smile through the gas station window, of the CRV parked outside my house at 4 a.m. just sitting there, watching, and the knowledge that somewhere out there, she's still driving, still looking for something. I just hope it's not me. I'm a photographer, mostly landscapes and nature stuff. Last summer, I decided to drive cross-country to build up my portfolio, all the iconic American landscapes I could hit in 3 weeks. Grand Canyon, Monument Valley, White Sands. I'd mapped out the whole route, booked hotels, had it all planned. West Texas was never supposed to be a highlight. It was just the stretch I had to get through to reach New Mexico. Miles and miles of nothing. Empty desert, scattered brush, heat shimmering off asphalt. Beautiful in its own way, but not what I was focused on. I was driving State Highway 285 south from Carlsbad when everything went wrong. My GPS died first, just shut off mid-direction, screen going black. I tried resetting it, unplugging and replugging it. Nothing worked. Okay, no problem. I had my phone. Except my phone had no signal. 1 bar, then nothing. Then no service, in the corner. I wasn't too worried at first. I'd been heading south on 285 for the last hour. All I had to do was keep driving straight. Eventually I'd hit Fort Stockton or Pecos or something. Just stay on the highway. Then I noticed my gas gauge. I'd filled up in Carlsbad before leaving, which meant I should have had plenty of fuel. But the needle was hovering just above empty, that little warning light glowing. That didn't make sense. I'd only driven maybe 60 miles. My car gets over 300 miles per tank on the highway. There was no way I was almost empty, but the gauge didn't lie. I was nearly out of gas, and I was in the middle of nowhere. No towns visible, no exits, just endless desert stretching in every direction under a sky that was growing darker by the minute. The sun was setting fast, that rapid desert twilight where day turns to night in what feels like minutes. Temperature was dropping. I'd been hot all day, but now I could feel the chill creeping in through the vents. I kept driving, watching the gauge sink lower and lower, praying I'd see something, a town, a gas station, even just another car. But there was nothing, just empty road disappearing into darkness. My headlights clicked on automatically as the sky turned from purple to black. The road ahead was a tunnel of light surrounded by absolute darkness. No moon, no stars visible yet, just the void of the desert at night. That's when I saw the lights. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. A cluster of lights in the distance, off to the right. They appeared suddenly, like they'd blinked into existence. Yellowish light, warm and inviting against the cold darkness. As I got closer, I could make out the shape, A gas station. Single building, 2 old pumps out front, 1 light in the window. It sat alone in the desert with nothing around it. No roads leading to it except the highway. No other buildings. No signs. My GPS had shown nothing out here. No towns for at least 50 miles. But here it was, exactly when I needed it most. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt uneasy. Something about it looked wrong. Too isolated, too old. Like it had been there for decades, frozen in time. But I didn't have a choice. My gas gauge was on empty, the warning light blinking insistently. I took the next exit, except there was no exit sign, just a turnoff that appeared right when I needed it. The station was about 100 yards from the highway. As I got closer, the feeling of wrongness intensified. The pumps were ancient, the kind with mechanical numbers that flipped instead of digital displays. The building looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1960s. Paint peeling, windows dusty, a single naked bulb hanging over the entrance. But it was open. The light was on. I pulled up to one of the pumps and killed the engine. The silence was immediate and oppressive. No highway noise, even though I'd just left the road. No wind. No insects. Just dead silence. The air smelled wrong when I got out. Not like desert, like ozone and something else. Something chemical that made my nose burn. The building was worse up close. The paint wasn't just peeling, it was rotting. The wood looked soft, warped. The windows were so dusty I could barely see inside, but there was definitely light and movement. I tried the pump first. No card reader, which didn't surprise me. The handle was stiff, like it hadn't been used in years. I squeezed it anyway, and incredibly, fuel started flowing. The mechanical numbers began flipping slowly. 1 gallon, 2 gallons. While it pumped, I looked around. No price sign, no brand name, no indication of what company operated this station. It was just here, existing in the middle of nowhere. The fuel pumped slowly, those mechanical numbers ticking over one at a time. I watched them climb, wondering how much this was going to cost me, wondering if they'd even take a card or if I'd need cash. When it hit 12 gallons, I figured that was enough to get me to the next town. I released the handle and headed inside to pay. The door wasn't locked. It swung open with a creak that sounded too loud in the silence. Inside was even stranger. Shelves lined the walls, but they were mostly empty. The few products that were there looked ancient. Candy bars and wrappers I didn't recognize, soda brands that didn't exist anymore, cigarette advertisements from decades ago. Behind the counter sat an old man. He had to be 80 at least, maybe older. Weathered face, deep lines, eyes that had seen too much. He looked up when I entered, and something in his expression made me want to turn around and leave. "Wondered when you'd show up," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel scraping together. "Sorry?" "You. Wondered when you'd get here." I had no idea what to say to that. I need to pay for gas. Pump 1. He nodded slowly, not taking his eyes off me. "Cash only, but you can pay after." I should probably know how much. "You shouldn't be on this road tonight." The words stopped me cold. What? This stretch. Bad night for it. Bad things happen here when the lights disappear. I don't understand what You should go, right now. Drive until you see the lights of Fort Stockton. Don't stop for anything. Don't pick up any hitchhikers. Don't pull over. Just drive. My skin was crawling. Everything about this was wrong. The station, the old man, the things he was saying. "How much do I owe you?" I asked, wanting to leave as quickly as possible. $12. I pulled out a 20, set it on the counter. He took it, counted out change slowly. His hands were gnarled, fingers bent at odd angles. The calendar, I said, noticing it on the wall behind him. That's not right. It showed August 1993. August 1993, as if that was the current date. He glanced at it, then back at me. Didn't say anything. That's from 30 years ago, I pointed out. Is it? He slid the change across the counter. You should go now, before it gets any later. I grabbed the money and got out of there. The whole interaction had taken maybe 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. Everything about that place was wrong, from the decrepit building to the old man's cryptic warnings to the calendar showing a date from before I was born. I got in my car, started the engine, and pulled away, fast. In my rearview mirror, I could see the station, glowing in the darkness. The old man was standing in the doorway now, watching me leave. I looked down to adjust my radio, trying to find any station that would come in out here. When I looked up again, maybe 5 seconds later, the station was gone. Not fading in the distance. Gone. The lights, the building, everything, just empty darkness behind me, like it had never existed. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, stared at the rearview mirror. There was nothing there, just the dark desert and the empty highway. I'd driven maybe a quarter mile. The station should still be visible, lit up like a beacon, but there was only darkness. I considered going back, actually put the car in reverse. But something stopped me. That old man's words. You should go. Right now. I drove forward instead, hands clenched on the wheel, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Fort Stockton appeared ahead after about 30 minutes. Real lights, real buildings, real gas stations with actual brand names and working card readers. I pulled into a Chevron, filled up my tank, which was still somehow 3/4 full, despite the gauge showing empty earlier, and sat in the parking lot trying to process. The next morning, after sleeping fitfully in a cheap motel, I drove back. I had to know, had to see if that station was really there or if I'd imagined the whole thing. I found the approximate location easily enough. I'd marked it mentally by the mile markers and distinctive rock formations. I drove that stretch of highway 3 times, slowly, searching. There was no station, no building, no off-ramp, just empty desert on both sides of the highway, stretching to the horizon. I stopped in Fort Stockton, asked at the visitor center about gas stations along Highway 285. The clerk pulled up a map, showed me the locations. Nothing where I'd stopped. Nothing for 50 miles in either direction. There used to be one there, an old-timer sitting nearby said. He'd been listening to the conversation. Long time ago, though, back in the 50s, maybe early 60s. Little independent place. Burned down in 61 or 62. Owner died inside. What happened? I asked. He shrugged. Fuel leak, they figured. Whole place went up. Owner was an old man. Lived there alone. Never rebuilt. Nothing out there but ruins now, if even that. I went back one more time, drove slower, looked harder. I found it eventually, or what was left of it. About 50 yards off the highway, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. Ruins. Collapsed foundation stones. Charred wood mostly buried in sand. No structure remaining. Nothing that could have sheltered me or sold me gas. But my credit card statement from that day shows no charge, no record of buying fuel, and my receipt. I found it in my pocket that evening, crumpled and faded. A paper receipt, the kind you don't see anymore. Printed in faded ink. 12 gallons, $12. Thank you for your business. The date at the top, August 17th, 1993. The year that calendar had shown, 30 years before my trip. I kept that receipt. It's in a drawer in my apartment, physical proof that something impossible happened. I've shown it to people, but they just say it must be from an old station I stopped at, that I'm misremembering dates. But I know what happened. I know what I saw. I started researching after that. Late nights, going down rabbit holes online, looking for anyone else with similar experiences. And I found them. Dozens of stories. Hundreds, maybe. Different states, different years, but always the same pattern. Drivers running low on fuel in remote areas, impossible gas stations appearing out of nowhere, cryptic attendants giving warnings, stations that vanish or turn out to have been abandoned for decades. A woman in Arizona whose station attendant told her to take a different route home. She did, and later learned there'd been a fatal accident on her usual road at exactly the time she would have been there. A trucker in Oklahoma who stopped at a station that showed him impossible things on the fuel pump. Coordinates that led him to a missing person. A couple in Nevada whose attendant gave them specific directions to avoid a stretch of highway. They followed the directions and later discovered that stretch had collapsed in a flash flood. Stories of stations that save lives. Stations that appear only to certain people at certain times. Stations that exist between moments, between places, between what is and what could be. Some people think they're supernatural, guardian angels or spirits trying to help. Others think they're glitches in reality, places where time gets tangled and past and present overlap. A few think they're warnings from alternate timelines, places where different versions of events are trying to communicate. I don't know what that station was. I don't know who that old man was, or how he knew I was coming, or why he warned me about that road. All I know is that I took his advice. I drove straight through to Fort Stockton without stopping, and whatever was supposed to happen that night on that dark stretch of a highway didn't. Maybe nothing would have happened anyway. Maybe I was just tired and stressed and my mind played tricks on me. Maybe that station was exactly what it seemed. An old, run-down place that I've simply misremembered. But I still have that receipt. August 17th, 1993. 30 years before I was there. And sometimes, late at night when I'm driving through remote areas, I look for those impossible places, those stations that shouldn't exist. Part of me hopes I never find another one, but part of me hopes I do. Because maybe they're there for a reason. Maybe they appear when they're needed. Maybe somewhere in the fabric of reality, there are places that reach across time to help those who are lost. Or maybe I'm just making sense of something that has no sense to make. Either way, I don't drive through West Texas anymore. I take different routes. Longer routes. Because some mysteries are better left alone, and some warnings should be heeded. I hope these stories got under your skin the way they did for me. These are the kinds of encounters that remind us how vulnerable we really are when we're out there alone, just trying to get from one place to another. Next time you stop for gas in the middle of the night, take a good look around. Pay attention to who's watching. Check your mirrors. Trust your instincts. Because sometimes those late-night fuel stops lead to encounters you can't explain. And sometimes you never really leave. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there, and maybe fill up before dark.